Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting for November 22nd, 2021 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, let's remain standing. Let's remember, as we go into the holidays here, that the safety of our children is really paramount, and what happened in Washita, Wisconsin should just never happen anywhere. And pray for those families. Thank you. As customary in our meetings, we start with public comment, and the police chief has asked me if he could speak. First, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council, Mr. Town Manager. I just wanted to let the council know that last Friday at about 9 o'clock in the morning, we had our final interview with the Commissioner on Accreditation of Law Enforcement Agencies, which is a nationwide organization that gives standards of best practices to law enforcement agencies. And Londonderry passed with flying colors and indeed was one of the benchmark agencies out of that interview. I wanted to thank you each for the support that you gave to this process. It's an important one. Many of the standards we had already been completing, but we are now recognized as an accredited agency. So thank you, and I want to give particular thanks to Kevin, who 4 or 5 years ago, he and I began to talk about this and gave it his full support, and without that, this kind of a thing doesn't really work. So it's a credit to the community, a credit to the council, credit to the town manager. So thank you very much.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Congratulations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in public comment. If you would like to approach the council, now would be the time, and there's a 5-minute limit.
Ted Combs, 6 Bancroft Road. I'm wondering, are you going to be taking comment on ordinance 2021-03?
It's a first reading, so we'll be taking comment at the public public hearing, which would be probably on Monday. But if you want to speak to it during public comment, that's certainly appropriate if you'd like.
Okay. I guess my comments were is I understand that it will be mostly directed at the properties in the Woodmont area. I had a thought of potentially expanding it to other areas in town, specifically more for the Pettingill Road area and the airport area for the commercial industrial area up that way to influence more business to come up that way as well. I know we're trying to really drive business to come to Woodmont, but I think driving it in that direction as well would be helpful, as certainly, I believe it was about 10 years ago, there was an economic analyst who said that the airport and Pettingill Road area would become a larger economic hub than the Pease trade port. So I think finding ways to offset maybe some of the upfront fees that I know a lot of businesses have to pay to even get into the land, that with it being so expensive up that way, I think would be a good driving factor for up that way. So I don't know if that might be something for you guys to consider at some point.
We can certainly take a look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're continuing public comment. Is there anyone who would like to approach the council on comment this evening? Seeing none, public comment is now closed.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we open public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open for resolution 2021-24, resolution relative to the elderly exemption policy, presented by Steve Hamilton. Hi, Steve.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council.
Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here. This is a piece of somewhat housekeeping. where when a revaluation occurs, if there is no adjustment to the amount of the benefit for an exemption, then there may be a relative decline in the effectiveness of that exemption. And so this is an attempt to make an adjustment to the benefit amount so that there is a, as it were, same bang for the buck for people who qualify for the exemption. And so for this, resolution, it is the recommendation of the assessing department that the benefit amounts increase for persons age 65 to 74 years to $144,000 exemption of value from their property taxes. For a person 75 years of age up to 79 years of age, the benefit amount would increase to $180,000. And for a person of age 80 years or older, the benefit amount would be an exemption of $240,000. Now, those are an increase of roughly 16% for each of the categories. And I arrived at the 16% recommendation by analyzing the value of the residential real estate that were receiving these types of exemptions and looked at the overall increase in value for those properties. Although there's no way to make it work the same as it did before for everybody because every value is a little bit different. This is the general trend for those properties. And that was a little bit higher than the overall increase in residential property.
So Steve, there's also a provision in this that they have to meet a certain income requirement as well, right? Have those numbers remained the same?
They have remained the same. I would recommend that in advance of next year, there be a consideration of an adjustment of those income specifically limits. It's a little bit risky at the moment to change too much the income requirements because it's income from all sources, and that right now does include payments from the federal government for COVID-19 relief. And so we're in a little bit of a flux to wait, and hopefully we'll see that incomes will stabilize, and next year I'll be able to make a good, solid, and firm recommendation to you for any changes that might be appropriate for that.
Thank you. Before I go to the public, questions from the council? Joe?
So if we don't take an increase in the pay now, how many people do you think that's gonna knock out?
So it doesn't, what it does is it changes the number of people who are going to be able to be in their home without having a tax burden. There are a number of participants in these exemption programs that have their entire tax burden exempted, and that would be reduced if this remains unchanged. And so more people who meet those income and asset limits would pick up an additional tax burden.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Just to follow up on that,
Absolutely.
I'm thinking that
Please proceed.
I'm thinking that we probably should change it now. I mean, instead of waiting, I just wanted to see what the council felt. I just wanted to get that recommendation, just pass it along to the rest of you guys.
Yes.
Steve, the way I interpreted Joe's question was a little different than I think what you answered. The way I interpreted it was if people, because of the COVID situation and the additional payments, unemployment, and some of the bonus payments to people with children and so forth, the way I interpret this question is how many people are going to get knocked out of this because their income is going to be too high.
And so I'm sorry if I misunderstood the question.
You answered it in a different way, but I get what you were saying.
Okay, but Councilor Dolan, the reality is that we don't know. we typically go through a procedure of requalification annually. We ask people who receive these benefits to provide us with that income information, and then we would remove anybody who had excessive income that wouldn't meet the qualification. We suspended those last year because of the impact that the additional federal payments would have on people's ability to qualify. And so what we didn't want to have happen was have us send out a bunch of letters, have people tell us about the money that they received as income, and then have to tell a bunch of people that they weren't going to qualify. And so we kind of just held our ground on the people who were previously qualified. We can do that for up to 5 years. So the state will look at us to say, have you requalified people within a 5-year period? So we have some time to let that income stabilize before we get back to a process of requalification.
Additional follow-up?
Of course.
So what you're saying is that you're probably not gonna knock anybody out, you're gonna let it settle for another year or so?
That's what our plan is for right now, because we have to analyze the previous year's income, and so moving into next year, we'd be faced with the same problem because there were federal payments that would have to be counted in 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Clarification on that? Counterpoint?
Please proceed.
So I just want to make it clear for everybody, because we're going back and forth here, I just want to make it really clear. So if they wouldn't have qualified, well, if they made $42,000, they're gonna qualify. So in other words, 40,000 was the maximum. If they had more income because of all the things that Councilor Dolan said, and they made, say, $2,000 or $3,000, and they shouldn't qualify according to this exemption, you're gonna let them qualify for the next few years.
We're not going to requalify them.
So
So
that-
we're not going to ask them to provide us with that. We may do that annually, but we don't need to. And so for the moment, because of the changing nature of the income, not because people requested to get additional income, but just because it was forthcoming from the
I got
federal
my tax
government.
credit last year, how long is that good for?
For your,
You said we're not gonna do it yearly yet,
right,
so.
so we have to requalify at least every 5 years.
Okay, right, so the point is that this person's still gonna get their tax credit, that's all I was worried about,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, who's next? Did you want-
Deb,
Okay,
Deb
thank you.
was-
These are, I had these questions earlier and they were answered, but I'm sure there are other people in the audience that have the same question. I noticed that it said 3 years, which seemed like a short time to live in the town to get such a substantial discount on their tax bill. So I just was hoping that you could address that. And in section B, speak to the 2 acres.
Okay, so those are great questions. The residency requirement is a residency within New Hampshire, and so it's not specific to the town. And that residency requirement is statute. It's in the law. Interestingly, it used to be 5 years, and the legislature, about 5 years ago, rolled that back to 3 years for the elderly exemption, thinking that the 5 years was too long. There are things that the town can make choices on. The income and asset limits, choices can be made about those. The amount of the benefit, choices can be made about those. But the basic qualification of residency is something that's fixed in the statute. Now, when we consider the assets that a person owns, we don't consider the value of their residence to be an asset. That's exempt from consideration. So if you own the home and you're claiming an exemption on the home, we don't consider the home or any equity that you have in the home to be an asset. If you had, for example, a home located on 100 acres of land that was developable, you'd have more than just the value of the asset. And the law requires us to consider the value of your primary residence and 2 acres around it to be your primary residence, but then the excess land may be an asset that we'd have to consider separately.
And can, I know in some states they do this, and I don't know, I guess this more is for Tom. They have sliding scales, so the longer you've been in the state, the more discount you get, and the shorter you are, the less discount you get. I've just, because you paid into it for so much longer, I just know like some states it's sliding scales, but I know that's not the way it works here, but.
I don't know how it works in other states. I know how it works here.
Yeah.
And you're right in saying that it can't be set up that way. The age categories and the benefit amounts are pretty closely described by the law,
Yeah,
and then we have to stay within those.
thank you.
Question.
Yes, of course.
Questions answered. I'm all set.
You all set? Everybody's all right? Everybody good? Yes?
Just to follow up, and Steve, I apologize if you'd sent this to me, I don't have it with me. What is the total dollar amount of the tax exemption we're looking at?
So the total dollar amount of exemption for the elderly exemption is $26,191,200. So that's the amount of value which is exempted from a total of 179 qualified recipients.
Go ahead.
So that's, I'm just trying to figure out, just so everything's transparent here, what that means on the tax rate. So is it roughly $3.85 on the tax rate? That sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
Justin, you're better with the calculator than I am.
Not sure I fully understand the question.
You're talking
What are you saying, taking $26 million out of our assessed value or the, of the town, how does that affect our tax rate?
We have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, so minus $26 million in revenue, what does that mean to the tax rate? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone that has any questions? This would be the time. Yes, sir. Right there's great, Ted.
Take home 6 Bancroft Road. So just doing some quick Google searching, the max for someone who's 7 years old living off just Social Security is a little over $45,000 as a single person. So if you're a single person and you've never put money into a retirement program and you're just living off Social Security, you cannot qualify for this. Do we want to look at even raising it just above what the, the max Social Security payment would be right now for someone who maxed out on Social Security but never saved in an IRA or anything? I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who are labor people or low-income people out there who just did Social Security, but, I don't know if it's something that you guys want to consider or not, because there's a lot of people who may just live off Social Security and things are getting pretty tight.
Thank you.
That's a good point.
Anyone else during public comment? So Steve, if we were to look at these, and I understand what you're saying about the adjustments of the rates and everything, so let me ask you something more about process. So when you're sitting down with someone to qualify and everything, and we look at what they have, how, I'm trying to find the right word, how empathetic are we? I know the law is the law.
We try to faithfully apply the law as you have adopted it and then modified it. And also be faithful to all of the other taxpayers who, in the presence of this kind of an exemption, that represents about $481,000 in taxes that would otherwise be collected from other people, but that burden gets spread out over the rest of the community. We take into account the value of assets. We try as best we can to help people to find what the value of those assets would be. And we also allow for good faith encumbrances. A a prime example would be the value of an automobile. And someone may have an expensive automobile, but if they have a loan against it, that's a good faith encumbrance against the value of that asset. And so it would be the value of the asset net, the loan that was outstanding on that asset. It's a little bit harder when it comes to income. When you're getting money in and then you're getting money in, and the law requires us to consider income from any source, not just income that you would report on your federal taxes. It's income from any source.
Yes.
Is the number we use for income, is it the adjusted gross income, or is it just the W-2 number?
No, it's by statute, income from any source, with very few exceptions. One of them would be proceeds from a life insurance policy, or income from a business that had expenses that had to apply against it. And so it's a pretty broad definition by law of what income is, and it doesn't match up with a federal tax filing. In fact, most of the people who would qualify and do qualify are exempt from filing a federal tax return.
I just have one more question. I know Ted brought up the difference in a single family, right? But what is the difference? Do you happen to know how much of a difference it is with a couple? Like, how much do they get if, like, it's a two-family Social Security?
So I'm not an expert in Social Security.
I'm just looking for
so I have no
guesstimations,
idea.
just to see how much the difference is.
I have no idea. I do know that we have many people, I think 179 households that qualify based on their income. And so I think that that there may be a higher amount of Social Security that might be possible now for people who are working now and who are going to be collecting Social Security in the near term.
So Chairman,
I hope so, but
if I may,
Sure,
I
go
think
ahead.
the answer to Deb's question is in section 2B.
2B?
That says if you're married, you have to have a combined net income not more than $50,300.
Right, it's just a difference of $10,000. I was just trying to figure out, like, so what Ted was saying, it's like $45,000 if you're single, adding in the Social Security, so it puts them over by, $4,000 and change, and I was just kind of curious more than anything else. I know we're going to wait to look at it, but I was just kind of curious as, how much is the difference between a married couple? Is it going to be, a $9,000 difference, or about the same $5,000?
Yeah,
It's actually double, so I just looked it up
You
here.
looked it up? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's $38.95 is the max for each person. So to Ted's point, I mean, it blows that second number away. I mean, it's way more than that.
and
Well, and with
again, just
everything
to,
else, like all the food, energy, every other thing going up, people on a very fixed income.
Well, I think the thing we have to, and that's why I phrased it as empathetic. I phrased my question as how empathetic are we? I understand all that and everything.
Yeah, I do too.
The problem is that you have to listen to what Steve said. He has to do a balancing act between all the taxpayers. So perhaps maybe the question is that where do you handle other towns, you've worked for the state, you've seen other things. Where do we rank in all this? Are we in the middle? Are we at the bottom? Are we at the top?
so I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I can come back and tell you, and that was my recommendation, is that we would have this conversation into the future. And we'll look at this and analyze what the impact is on the qualification standards, which is different than what this resolution, this is about the benefit amount, but certainly these are valid concerns and questions that I do want to be able to provide you with. I have a list of every town and every asset and income limit, as well as the benefit amount not just for the towns that I work in, but also for all of the towns in the state. So we can provide you with some good evidence as to what a peer set of communities does for their elderly.
Okay, so perhaps what we can
That'd be
do is
great.
we can approve this resolution as it stands tonight, so we can continue with the budgeting process and then reopen it with a new resolution and make an adjustment, if we decide to do that. Is that good?
That's good to me.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I think Justin has an answer.
Yes.
If we were to lose 26 million in valuation, it would be about 2.2 cents on the tax rate, around that.
Okay. All right. I'll accept a motion to approve Resolution 2021-24.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Steve, on to Resolution 2021-25.
2021-25 is very similar to the elderly exemption program. This is the disabled persons exemption policy. This is a lot less complicated. There is just one category, those people who are qualified by Social Security Administration as being disabled under Title II or Title 16 of the Social Security Disability Act. That process carries with it a similar kind of qualification standard, and also has a benefit amount of an exemption. This applies to a smaller number of individuals. There are a total of 30 disability exemptions that are granted currently, and 10 of those will pay no taxes because of the benefit amount versus their total tax burden and the value of their property. And so the recommendation here was to increase to the same level as the elderly exemption, lowest age category, of a benefit of $144,000.
Questions? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing.
Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes?
So I just had a really quick question, just probably words. Section 3, Benefits A. Is there, would it be beneficial to add the same type of words that we had in Section 2, B of the elder exemption policy, where it talks about excluding the value of the person's residence, because it doesn't really acknowledge that there? So on the 2021-25, Section 3, Benefits, Section A, it doesn't spell out the exclusion of values of person's residence. So it kind of, I think it should.
It does, it loops you back to the policy on the elderly exemption. It says the taxpayer's net income and assets in Section 2D shall be the same as specified in the Londonderry elderly exemption policy. And so I think that ties it into the elderly exemption policy in a way which creates the same rules for the road. But those requirements are also statutory.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Are there any questions from the public regarding this resolution only? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to approve Resolution 2021-25.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Resolution is passed. Steve,
Chairman.
thank you. We'll look forward to seeing you with some additional information in the near future.
I'll be waiting for it and hope to see you the first of the year, I would think.
You may see us again during budget season, since we're crunching numbers now. So, thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Public hearing is closed. On with the agenda. New business, order 2021-16 and 2021-17. These are both orders for expenditures for maintenance trusts. Dave?
Good evening. Again, my name is Dave Wally. I'm proud to serve as your Public Works Director of and facilities as well. I have two requests tonight that we bring before you out of the Expendable Maintenance Trust. The first being order number 16, which is in reference to a situation we have going on with a backup generator at the fire station number 2. It's going on 11 years old as the backup generator. It needs to have a, during the preventative maintenance, we found a leak, and we need to do a repair, and we have a provided estimate for that as well. The total for the repair and parts is $2,609.74, labor $2,257.50, for a total of $4,998.80 is the request in order to repair the generator. They refer to it as a leak. Kind of actually like to reclassify that as more of it is weeping. If it was leaking profusely, then we would have just gone ahead and done the repair as needed. This is an important function of that fire station, and so we're seeking funding to make the repair as requested. Any questions?
Yes.
Yep.
Could you just tell me how many hours are on this generator?
Let me see if it's in the estimate. I don't have the hours that I can see right here. Just that it's noted that it's an 11-year-old generator. But I can get you the information on that if you need it.
Well, yeah, because generators are, it's not necessarily the age, but the usage, so the hours would be a good factor to see when you're evaluating this. And it's just the fuel pump that the issue is?
Yeah. They found it during the preventative maintenance work, annual work that they look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Accept the motion to approve Order 16.
So moved. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Order 16 passes. Order 17 for $9,681.20.
This one's a little bit more involved to explain, but the general description reads as follows. Station number 1 has had several HVAC issues that stemmed early on from its construction. After using several HVAC contractors through the years, there's not been an independent, complete overview from one vendor. We utilized Eckhart & Johnson to provide us with a review and report of the entire HVAC system with proposals and remedies and solutions. After reviewing the operation of the system over the course of several days and different time periods, we have been provided 5 proposals in total needing to be completed in order to properly heat and cool the facility. The lion's share of the proposal is really in reference to what I commonly refer to as a building management system, but it's called a different acronym here. It's a BAS system. And that essentially is the software and the programming that tells all the different components of your system within the building and how to run efficiently and how to talk to one another, each different unit. There were several other little things that were found that needed to be taken care of. We perhaps could have moved forward on some of them, but I felt the best way to do this was to just look at it as a complete comprehensive package to make sure that even if we did the mechanical repairs that are necessary, that it really wouldn't matter if the system's not, looking at the overall operation of what's going on within the facility itself. One of the issues that's making it not understand what's going on correctly was the location and perhaps even replacement of what they call an ERU outside the building, which lets it know what the current humidity and temperature is outside the facility. So that's one of the things that will help them help the system regulate the building better. And then there were a couple of other issues with the condensate collector and what have you. And the breakdown is there as presented. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions. Yep.
Can I just clarify one thing real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
I keep forgetting, north and south. One is north.
Yeah, one's north. I've had the same trouble myself. You're getting
One's the older,
acclimated to the town.
one's the older building. Two's older, one is newer.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to remember. Go ahead, please.
Okay. So this HVAC system has been having problems since the onset, and how long ago was that?
It sounds like, from what I understand from the historical, and I do have Kevin Zins that can probably perhaps brief us on the history of it,
I can give you a little insight.
or the chief. Chief might even be better.
So the station was built in 2010. If we remember correctly, that was part of the government's Reconstruction Act. So that whole station was built on a grant. And when we built it, it had to be towards LEED certifications. So you had to use all green equipment. That's why we have the solar panels on the roof. And you had to use certain components within the building, all American made. And if everybody recalls correctly, there was no clerk of the works for that building. The general contractor left the building 14 weeks prior to the project being completed. So this HVAC system has been a challenge pretty much since we got it, and like Dave is talking about, the computer system that runs it, there was 2 companies initially that programmed this. One of those companies went under. The second company is still in business, but the person that programmed it no longer works there. So trying to find people to get into the system to figure out how they had programmed it, I mean, you need to be pretty much a rocket scientist to try and figure it out. It's been a challenge right from the get-go.
Well, so you'll see where I'm going with this line of questioning. And again, do you happen to know how many hours are on this thing? Is it used all the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way the LEED certification works is the air within the building is exchanged within, the full volume of air within the building is exchanged within a certain time frame, within a 24-hour period, and it's done several times throughout that 24-hour period.
Okay. So my point is, so since it's had its problems, right, the cost of it, whatever the cost was, and since it's had its problems, I don't know how many repairs. I mean, do we know how many repairs have happened to this one system and how much that one system has cost? And is this really going to be the answer to it, or should we be saying, oh, we fixed these and it's going to be good for another X years, or should we really be looking at a real fix for it, like a newer one?
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
I can answer to that. I can't give you the dollars and cents. I do know that today, myself and the finance director did review a lot of our HVAC expenses over the last several years. In my initial conversation with Battalion Chief Zins, that's kind of the exact approach that I took with this comprehensive look at it. We decided to use Eckhart and Johnson because we had a great deal of success with working with them on the new central station. They also, to the chief's point about the programming of it, they are a certified vendor on that type of software system. So if we're going to go ahead and have them tinker with it, if you will, for the lack of a better term, they're certified in it. We also didn't want to just look at that one aspect. I wanted them to go in and evaluate the whole facility over a period of time, several days, nights, different temperatures, whether this was a good time of year to do it, because sometimes you have 80-degree days and sometimes you have 40-degree days. So they got a good range to look at exactly what's going on. They are going to take onus to the whole system. They're going to own this for a year. They've told us what they need to do, and they're on board with then setting parameters and checkpoints and whatnot. And they'll also be able to evaluate it when it happens. They're going to be able to look at it in real time. So if all of a sudden we're saying there's too much humidity, they can log in remotely and look right at that and see what's going on and start evaluating the situation right then and there. So it's not going to be like come back and try and grab reams of information, which they didn't have set up in the current configuration. So they'll be able to look at it in real time. So there's a benefit there as well. But this one company is going to be not only our software people, but they're also going to be the mechanical people as well.
It just seems like every 3-4 months we're fixing, maybe not yours, but we're fixing an HVAC system constantly.
Well,
and I mean, you got to at one point, it's like a car, right? And how much money are you going to throw into fixing a car that's just has an issue and you need to get rid of it and get a better car. Because in the long run, it's gonna save you money.
Well, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
that's
I
what I
do.
was trying to figure out. Is this like, since this has been from the onset, is this like a car that's a lemon that you just keep throwing money at? And it's like, if you took all those dollars, you could have got a brand new one that would have ran more efficiently and effectively and saved us money in the long run. I know that's your forte, not mine, but I was just trying to.
I know what you're driving at, and I understand the frustration in it. But to do a complete removal and overhaul of a system is certainly probably more than I'm guessing. But within the last 10 years of such a new facility, I don't think it's time to do a complete removal. But I think in order to stop that was the last company that was in here, and then we weren't happy with the results we got with them, so we tried somebody else, and they say, well, it's like taking your car to a different mechanic and another mechanic. Everybody has an opinion. And then when you're all said and done, they may say, well, it's the computer, onboard computer system in your car that's telling all the components to do things wrong. So, Eckhart and Johnson is willing to take that on entirely and own the whole problem.
And they're warrantying it? Are they giving us a guarantee?
And they are putting in a 1-year warranty on it as well.
Yeah.
So there's good benefits in the fact that, a little bit off topic, but I've discovered something similarly going on with this building too. That the software, the software was written in 2002, so it's 20 years old. But I won't go too far down that path, but it's something that I'm looking at.
I just wanted to wrap my, because I always see it and it just it seems like it's every
Well-
council meeting. And I just
And
wanted to wrap my head around it.
Yeah, and commercial buildings are tricky. They're not easy. There's a lot of different components. You can have a lot of different zones. You have air handlers and air exchangers. You have different sensors and temperatures, and these things are getting more and more sophisticated with these building management systems, which make all the things run, in concert with one another. And if that's not, it doesn't matter how well or how brand new, your engine is under the hood, or how well or new your condensers are and your mechanical stuff. If the brains aren't talking to it, then
Yeah.
it's never going to work right.
Yeah. And so is that 1 year just on what they did or on the whole?
On what they're going to do as a whole, then what I would like to plan to do, and we haven't gotten this far into discussion until we can get past this hurdle, is, we need to start looking at some contractual preventative maintenance programs for all the facilities. How we go about that depends on how different departments want to play with one another, or how we want to look at it as a totality of the town. But we need to start having, Londonderry's fortunate, we have a lot of nice newer facilities, at least built in this century. And so, but we need to maintain them, because I know how bad it can get when you don't maintain them properly. So,
That's what I was trying to get
important.
at, more proactive.
we do not currently have a contract for this facility that has an annual prevent, and that's some of the smaller issues that have come up. And, if we continue to neglect the system like that, those numbers you will see climbing will be before you again, looking for more expenditures. So I'm hoping that with this reputable company, that they will bring all these things conclusively together, and we shouldn't be having such frequent issues.
And the only thing I would encourage you to do is try to push them for just a little bit longer of warranties, like 1.5 years, 2 years. That would be, at least a comfort to
We can.
me as a taxpayer.
We can do that. Of course, it'll drive costs, but for this type of evaluation, they put a 1-year warranty on it. So,
And I can talk a
Thank
little
you.
bit more about the preventative maintenance schedules on these things. So, when we first moved into the building, we had a preventative maintenance schedule on it for, I think, a period of probably a year or two. But what I found over time is, so I had preventative maintenance on the HVAC system, I had preventative maintenance on the overhead doors, I had preventative maintenance on the Plymouth vent system, and, several systems throughout the building. And what I found over time is the cost of these preventative, especially for the HVAC systems. My station maintenance budget is $24,000. To do the 3 stations, Kevin, it's what, $7,000 or $8,000? I think for a preventative maintenance schedule yearly, for just the 3 stations to come in 3 times a year to look at the system is like $8,800. Well, you take that, out of a $24,000 budget
yeah.
to fix everything else, I can't do it. So what I found was it was, for us to do the maintenance that we could in-house, changing the filters and making sure the belts and everything were okay. And it was cheaper for me to call for a repair than it was to pay for the preventative maintenance schedule because it was costing so much money, and that was on all systems, the doors, the Plano vent system, everything. It was just cheaper for me to call and have it repaired versus paying thousands of dollars for them to not really do anything.
No, I get it, but sometimes you can negotiate that.
Yep, absolutely.
A little bit more aggressively and get a better rate.
Yep.
That's it. Sorry.
Real
Yep.
quick question, when we talk about total air exchange, does that include the bays? Does
No.
that-
No, I don't think so, Jim,
So
to
it
be honest
doesn't
with you. I
include
think it's
when
just
we're
a
talking
living
living
space.
space? and office?
Occupied area.
Living space, right, Kev?
Just,
Huh? Yeah, just
Not the base?
a living space.
all right, okay. With regards to the warranty, is that dictated by the type of equipment that the installer's using?
No, so their warranty would basically be around that software work and any of in other words, if, the
They touch it, they
condensate.
own it.
What's that?
They touch it, they own it.
That's right,
Okay, good.
yeah. They can't warranty.
Sorry to
other-
interrupt, but
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
But, they did evaluate the entire system, so if something got by them, then we could have a, rather stern discussion with them about what it was that we asked in their proposal.
Real quick question, was that AVAC system value engineered on the building?
That one was not. No, Station 2 was.
Station 2
The
was?
south end.
Okay.
And that's the one we replaced probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, okay.
So this system was not, but again, it was all part of that LEED certification, so
yeah,
it had to be
yeah.
certain components within the building. And
Yeah.
it was a struggle right from the get-go with the general contractor that we had up there. And then having no clerk of the works to oversee the process, it was a challenging building, to say the least.
Thank you.
I guess the only suggestion I would make to you is that, with regards to these software systems, as far as version control is concerned, the upgrades come faster than anybody can handle them.
Yeah.
So, or the bug fixes, et cetera. So do we have a process for handling the upgrades to the software systems? And if we don't, we probably should, because it's not our area of expertise. So while they may be warranting this for 1 year, as far as the software is concerned, in the life of a software business, that's really nothing. So I would encourage you to go back to the vendor and ask them for some sort of longer agreement with regards to the software upgrades. Is the $5,400 the software upgrade?
Yeah, it's a separate proposal, and I'm not sure if it was included in your packet, but.
So
I
what
do have it.
what these software upgrades should say is that there should be a year is, in the software business, is ridiculous. I mean, if they're not doing something for 3 years, because they're gonna upgrade the system more than 2 or 3 times in 3 years. Now, if we wanna enter into an agreement with them, because it's a 10-year-old system, and that there is a dollar amount that we pay for maintenance to upgrade software every year, that's another story. That's something we can talk about. Because as you said, if we don't stay on top of it, we're gonna be back here at $9,681.20 again.
I don't want to confuse what we're talking about when we say upgrade. We're not, taking the entire program and putting in a whole new one. There's some work within it, with some of the work that they want to do, that they're going to have to enter in some of the new work, so.
So what happens when I say upgrading the software businesses,
Right.
is that what it means is that they're tweaking the software.
Right, okay.
So the vendor is tweaking the software. Whoever wrote it is tweaking the software.
Right.
You may be on version 2 when it was implemented, and it's now version 9. Much like Microsoft increases versions on Windows.
Right.
Sort of the same concept. I don't know if that's the issue here or not, but it's certainly something that you probably want to take a look at if we've had these many problems.
John,
Yes.
I just want to add some historical perspective. When before we replaced the North Station, the old North Station, which was the north side of the senior center, basically.
Yep.
Whenever one of our fire trucks or vehicles up there started up or returned from a call, any folks that were upstairs in the living quarters were overwhelmed with exhaust fumes and the smell of what was going on there. I mean, that building, I'm talking about how important it is to have a good HVAC system, the quality of the air for our employees who are breathing that air. That building was held up, I remember, a couple of
Railroad ties.
railroad tracks, right, to hold it up. So we've come a long way, I'll put it that way. And
Sure have.
I would encourage you to keep the HVAC in good shape for our first responders, for their health.
Understood.
Okay, what do you want to do?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second?
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes opposed.
Thank you.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Order 2021-18, withdrawal of fire department equipment capital reserve funds.
Fire department show tonight. Sorry.
At least there's not a fire.
Welcome back.
So this
You
equipment.
want some
that-
of these wheelie things for people?
Yeah. This equipment that I'm asking for, so the first amount to Industrial Protection Services, that is for the remaining components that we need to outfit our apparatus and different equipment that we have on the apparatus for the new SCBA's that we purchased, so the self-contained breathing apparatus that we purchased through that grant process that we got. So we got the $262,000, I believe, Justin, for a grant to replace all of our self-contained breathing apparatus. And this is just different components that the grant did not cover, so upfitting the fittings up in the tower, the aerial tower, to be able to accept the airline hoses, some of the different RIT packs for different hoses and fittings and masks and stuff like that. So it's just the miscellaneous components to finish up that revamping of that system. The second thing is a Stryker stair chair. And that's a device that's used to lift patients from, either a bottom floor or a top floor that they can, they sit them into and they strap them into it. And they have now, the newer version has these tracks on them, so when you're taking them down the stairs, the tracks follow the stairs down. Probably about a month and a half ago, we had a patient that was somewhere around 480 pounds, and with the crews doing so, they had to rig up almost like a pulley lift system to get this individual down the stairs, and when they did so, the patient got down safely, but it really kind of did a lot of damage to the chair itself. So we've since kind of scabbed it back together and been able to use it, but I think for the safety of both the first responders and the patients that are being transported on it, we should replace it.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none?
Motion to accept?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative.
Thank you all
Chief.
very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too. John, order 2021 and 19 and 20, we'll take them together.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Order number 2021-19 is requesting the expenditure of reclamation trust funds in the amount of $2,622. Those are for spare parts used for the repair and maintenance of the recycling carts, which are required for the automated curbside recycling collection system that the town of Londonderry operates. The order 2021-20 is again for requesting expenditures of reclamation trust funds in the amount of $9,690 from the reclamation trust fund to purchase recycling carts, again required for the automated curbside recycling collection. As I had presented back in our budget hearing back at the beginning of the month, some of those carts are getting up there in age. We're trying to get a manageable amount when we're ordering these carts. So I think this is the third time I come this year and asking for, and then that purchase of those new carts is about 120 carts that our vendor can handle. we don't want to inundate them with 9,000 carts, so that's what the purpose of the expenditure is.
Carts are 12 years old.
The original
Well, the
trash
green
carts.
the green ones are 12.
Correct.
And the
rec-
blue ones are what, 10?
About 5, right?
The blue ones are only 5 years old?
Yeah, some of them.
They look like blazes.
That's why the request.
The red
Understood.
buckets that are really old.
Any questions? I'll accept the motion to approve 19 and 20.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative.
Thank you.
We're approved. Okay, I have next on my agenda a ordinance 2021-03, an ordinance relative to creating the Londonderry Commercial Industrial Property Tax Incentive, first reading. I'll accept the motion to waive reading.
Second, motion.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes in the affirmative. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a public hearing on this at our next meeting, which will be November 29th. At that time, we will be entertaining comments.
John?
Chairman, it'll be the meeting following.
10 days.
December 6th? Oh, I need notice, right? Okay, yeah, December 6th. Thank you.
It's a 10-day minimum.
Right. Hey, listen, I was trying to get things done, sorry. Before we jump to the budget workshop, let me whip through the end here. The approval of minutes for November 1st, as presented. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'll hold off on, are we gonna have any liaison or town manager reports? Should I do them now or hold off until later?
I don't have anything to report.
Anything from liaisons? Okay, then we got that part done. I have been asked by for appointments and reappointments, I have been asked by, the chairman of the planning board, Mr. Rugg, to, ask someone to make a motion to, place Lynn Wiles, who has 11 years' experience, as a replacement for Chris Davies for the full-time position.
So
To
moved, Mr. Chairman.
fulfill that.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. I also have a text that I just got from our admin, Kirby, saying that we have multiple interviews here for the planning board over the next several meetings. So while we are happy to interview Mr. Dunn tonight, we will not be doing any appointing until we complete all of the interviews. So, Mr. Dunn, unless you want to stay and wait until after the budget workshop.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you for, for volunteering. Generally, we like to let people make an opening statement if they would like to make that, or if you prefer not to, that's.
Sure. I'll just say I am interested in being on a planning board and getting more involved with the town, and I would be happy to volunteer my services.
So I think the only thing we have open right now is an alternate position. Are you still,
Absolutely.
okay, just making sure, because you did put down full-time.
Yeah.
All righty. Where do you want to start?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Mr. Dunn well, and I'm familiar with his volunteer work so far, and I'd just like to thank you for volunteering and contributing to the town.
Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, Mr. Dunn, do you know of any conflicts that may arise in your personal or professional career that would be an issue for the town?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. And the other thing I like to comment here about being in management and being able to use those skills to apply to this position. How would what's an example of how you would do that?
You mean as far as
Any skills that you had as,
Yeah,
as
so,
a manager to help the planning board?
when people come before the board to ask for our approval of things, I've got some background on things that I've gone to other boards to get approval for, so I know how the process kind of works a little bit.
Okay, great. Have you been to any planning board meetings?
I have seen them online. I've not been to one physically.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Trying to think of a question.
Come back to you?
No. So what do you think that you will bring as an added value? Because you are a manager, right? How do you think that, it's kind of on with what Joe said, but what do you think is going to enhance the board by having this background that you have?
I think just having different perspective.
And what about your water background?
Yeah. Well, everyone knows I've been, as far as, I mean, specifically, as far as just driving to get things changed and get,
Yeah, and being on top of site plans and making sure, you know, that they're doing everything to
Right.
protect our natural resources of
absolutely.
water.
That's definitely something I'd like to definitely see that happen. Is definitely see the town have something where they get more specific instruction when a new development comes in.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jim?
No, I'm all set.
Thank you.
So I guess what I would say to you is that when I joined the planning board in 1999, I had these grand illusions of that I was going to do all these things that I found out it was against law. And found out how a Dillon rule state runs and how, you know, we only have the authority the legislature gives us. What I also learned about the town of Londonderry is that, you know, it takes $123 million to run everything. And if we don't generate revenue, it only comes from one other place. So the balancing act on the planning board is that, you know, do you develop, don't you develop? I mean, I can remember giving a speech in 2002 at the planning board, you know, advocating for moratoriums and everything else, only to come to learn that, you know, it really wasn't realistic. So I guess my question for you would be is eyes wide open going into this?
Absolutely.
You for more revenue or against more revenue? Because that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Is, you know, we have this vision of protect the center of the town, protect the resources of the town, build around the outside. We don't do that, we all pay more taxes.
Right.
That's kind of how it works. So what do you think?
I'm for more revenue, but I'd also like to protect our water system and our natural resources and the beauty that we have here. So I think it's a combination.
Okay.
We can kind of do both things.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah,
Do you have any questions for any of us?
I do not.
Well, sir, as you heard
All
me
right.
say at the beginning,
Absolutely.
apparently there are other candidates,
Yeah.
and we will speak with them, and I
Absolutely.
thank you for taking the time and for your current volunteering that you do now.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for stepping up.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Budget time.
Budget time. Justin's got a handout. They already have it? Great. So Justin made some budget adjustments just based on, some of it was some housekeeping based on position changes, and some of it is based on what we had discussed at the budget presentation on Saturday and adding monies back in for and utility costs. So I'm going to have Justin go over the handout he just gave so you can understand how it flows. The good news is I will tell you that everything has gone down. So the budget's gone down, and I'll sum it up at the end. But Justin, why don't you go over the handout?
Absolutely. So I've also put the replacements sheets for your workbook, so that way you can just remove it and keep this up to date, or you can keep it in there and have the history of it, just so there's no confusion. But in total, the operating budget went down $30,064. As Kevin said, a lot of this was due to personnel adjustments and hiring and things of that nature, where somebody retired, we came in with someone lower, so the budget went down. When you see something like that, it affects both the operating and the default budget, so the difference between operating and default did not change for that aspect. We also went through and at the budget.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Let's go into that a little bit more. So we had a senior person, and we were paying them X,
Correct.
who had been here for a number of years and retired. And their replacement came in at a lesser amount than they did.
Correct.
So we saved that money because there was a differential.
Right.
So like in government, a lot of the more senior people who have been here for a long time, whether it be teachers or whether it be police officers or fire people, they're at the top of what we call our union scales.
Yep.
So when someone comes in, they start at a lower point of those scales, and that way that's the reason we're paying less. Not because they're not as talented or as qualified. It's only because that's the way our wage system works.
Correct. Based on the level of experience is where they get put into the wage.
And that pretty much goes across all of the government entities here in town.
Yes.
Would be the same theory.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Just clarification on that, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please.
Yeah, and it does say insurance budget, though, so that there must have been some savings on the insurance as well.
So yes, if somebody came in and they had a family plan or one of the open positions was filled, we have to budget those at family plans.
Right.
When they come in and they opt out, take a single or two-person, you'll see a decrease in the budget because of that.
So, I mean, what we said earlier is correct, but it's a combination of salaries and benefits.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that you won't see, I guess what I'm trying to say is with default, you'll see that decrease as well because it's contractual obligation, so they'll drop on both sides.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. The other differences you'll see are, as Kevin mentioned, we talked about increasing certain utility lines as well as some IT lines to try and up our cybersecurity. So about 95,000 was put into that. The total differential between default and operating is $3,303. One of the other items that I put in there is I increased the town council budget line by $1,000 to appropriate funds for Leadership Londonderry. That is offset by the revenue aspect of $1,000 as well. But we have to, or no, I would like to start appropriating for it to continue the program fully going forward.
So, and just to put this into context, what this means is that, as I stated during my presentation on Saturday, the proposed budget I came in with was 0.6% above last year's operating, and the default at that time was I think 0.85%. The new default budget here is now just 0.5% above last year's operating budget. I think it's 0.51.
Default's 5.2, operating's 5.1.
Okay. Thanks, Justin.
You're welcome. I'm a numbers guy.
So we're up 0.5% year to year.
Yes.
Okay. So as we talked about on Saturday and everything, as we're seeing these inflationary times, I think we need to start having a serious discussion about what may happen and what we may need to go to the voters with as far as a warrant article to protect against those inflationary times. And I think we need to start having a serious discussion about that. Well, 0.5% is excellent. We need to talk about what are utilities really going to cost? What is gas really going to cost? What is cybersecurity really going to cost? And be fully transparent with the voters and say, okay, this is what we can do, and we can continue to kind of go along this way. But this is what the world is telling us is going to happen. What do you want to do? Yes? No? Is silence agreement?
I think out of all the ones that have been discussed, I mean, certainly utilities, I feel looking historically where we've been, what we're budgeted for, we've added more money back in on top of what we had. I feel like we're okay there going into the next budget. The cybersecurity is of concern. That's to me a bigger.
I mean, are we insured for what happened to Peterborough?
That's a loaded question. The answer is
That's why I asked this.
we are insured cybersecurity-wise. Peterborough is a bit of a different story where they may say that it was negligence based on what's been released on what happened there.
Are we insured if we have a revenue loss due to a hack?
It depends on how it occurred, but we should be, yes.
So if we're not proactive in doing our cybersecurity, that would be negligent, right?
Correct.
That's the question I'm asking. Okay. This is gonna be as long or shorter a budget workshop as you want.
Jim, I think you're hinting about inflationary pressures as we go into 2022. I think, we're all alarmed by the news reports that we have the highest inflation in 20 years, but we're not going to experience a lot of those elements. We're, food, things like that won't affect us. But I think the primary elements are energy in terms of heating and cooling and also fuel for our trucks and vehicles. I think those are the two areas that I think we should probably, if we're gonna put some money aside, or we're gonna build in a cushion to accept those inflationary pressures, we should, we're not gonna be buying any houses, we're not gonna be going down to Market Basket and buying food, but the things that we do consume, I think those are the areas that we should focus on.
Yeah, we'll definitely, sorry, Joe.
Sure.
We'll definitely take another look prior to next Monday's meeting to see if we do need to have a bigger adjustment in a separate article. We'll look at it again.
So one of the issues we have is when I've looked at this, I look at the historical evidence from the previous. We don't have the inflation in that historical evidence. We have the lower gas prices and things like that. So without you guys saying to do it, I don't have the backup to do it because the numbers haven't shown that.
So in 2014, gas was $3.40 a gallon.
Yeah, but
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but on Saturday, I asked, if you recall, I asked questions on every department, and we said that that was built in. So it's built in already. I talked about it, I said, I'm in the gas business, gas is gonna go up, are we sure we're building them in enough? Now, it could be that everybody, all the department heads did build it in, but they didn't build it in enough, if that's what we're talking about. But you can see it in the spreadsheets that we have built some money into it, so, if you're talking about not enough, I just wanna make sure people
Talking about not
on this
enough.
board, this board understand that
Yeah.
folks out there did prepare and for the fact that it was going
We
up.
know,
We're
especially-
budgeting 18 months out.
Right,
Especially in the gasoline.
yeah, it's gonna be very high.
We know what our consumption's gonna be.
Yep.
Historically, we know. What we don't know is what's the price gonna be. And there are lots of projections out there what it's gonna be, so we perhaps ought to take what we know and marry it with what the projection is to see what we should be budgeting. Same thing with electric power and so forth. We know what we're gonna consume for electricity in kilowatt hours, based on what we have now. We're not adding anything new. It's just, now, what's the rate the power company's gonna charge us?
You guys good up here? Budget committee?
I would just say, what other, are there any offsets? I mean, have you made any improvements that would reduce the consumptions at all? LED lights, are you installing that, or,
Yeah, we've been doing that for the last 5 years.
Yeah, there might be some savings here and there, but, that offsets it. Not that I'm not saying it's gonna cover 100%, I'm just saying that there could be something.
I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, are we going down the wrong path here? Are we going down the right path? I mean, should we be looking at this a different way? Are we too tight? I mean, because we're, if you look at the numbers, they're not changing. Yes, sir.
.51 and the .52 are respectable numbers. I'm proud to present that to the taxpayers. However, if we can't afford to buy fuel and provide the services that the taxpayers expect, we've done them no favors. So then it's the balancing act. Do we increase the operating budget to try to cover some of these anticipated additional fuel expenses and risk ending up with the default budget, not the higher now operating budget? Encounter that with a warrant article, which over the years, warrant articles kind of a 50-50 shot.
Well, this is what I would say to you, Jonathan, is every time we've looked to hire an employee, we put it on a warrant article. Every time we've communicated, since we've gone to default budgeting to the voters, we're about 90% that they approve, because it's completely transparent what we're doing. There's nothing hidden anywhere in the budget. I mean, we're 82% employee cost.
Large chunk is.
So it's either cut muscle or be transparent with the voters. Yes, sorry.
We talk about heating oil and gasoline and stuff. I'm looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, page 24 of the 114 pages. It's got heat and oil services, 2022 budget is the same as, is actually higher than what the 2023 proposed budget is, like $30. And if heating oil is says gasoline supplies, and you have that as a separate account number, Justin, so I don't know if that's just gasoline for all the departments in the town as a whole. But gasoline is at, 283,290 for last year, 283,290 for this year, so I don't see where we've planned for a higher budget for gasoline or for oil.
Is that for your total, or is that departments?
This is the total.
Yeah.
This is the 2023 proposed budget over the 2022 approved.
So you're looking at page 23 and 24.
Yes.
That's before we added in the $95,000 to help offset some, or not offset, to help accommodate some of these. The decrease in heat and oil was a discussion to reallocate it within the library in a position they felt was better suited to match that need. So if you were to go to the library budget, that's where you'll see that decrease. Otherwise, everyone else was stagnant on there.
Okay, can I get an updated PDF with these on it?
Yep, that's, yes.
What I don't want to do is be in a position of like, we didn't think this through. I mean, I don't want to ever,
Are you taking any comment from the public?
it's only a workshop, and we haven't been taking any, so I'm gonna stick to the policy. Thank you. So, what I don't want to do is be in a position of that, they tell me they can't plow the roads because we didn't plant enough gas.
John, where do we use heating oil? The library and the garage?
Well, the garage probably uses heating oil because it's got to use something different than natural gas because it doesn't go out that far. I mean, are the rest of our buildings on natural gas?
Use propane at the garage.
So
Propane is
propane's not getting any cheaper either. Go ahead.
So John, if we did what Councilor Dolan said and said, okay, hey, this is what we thought we would get to, and then said, I don't know, $5 or $6. I'm just thinking about gasoline, $5 or $6 a gallon, because we know the gallon usage. Calculate that difference, and then maybe put it on the warrant, on a warrant article, and because what it's going to do is go back to UFB anyway if we don't spend it, right? So in year over year, we've returned that to the taxpayer. So, in reality, that it's not like they're going to have a lot of money coming out of their pocketbooks and never going back in. It's going to go back in. So, and even maybe the way that we write the article is to say something like that. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Last year on election day, I went down and I took a picture of one of the signs of what gasoline was at. It's at $1.89 a gallon on election day in November. We all know what it's at now. It's at $3.40 a gallon. All right, there's places in this country that are paying $5 a gallon. I just want to make sure that we're gonna, we planned at $1.89 a gallon last year, or $2 a gallon for X number of gallons, and now it's twice as much. I just want to make sure we're gonna have enough money. Yes.
Have we looked into, since we lease a lot of our vehicles, and we're moving that way to keep it into the default budget and stuff, have we looked at like hybrid or electric vehicles that might be practical for any of this?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Not as of yet, we haven't, Tim.
Yes, Deb.
So I'm just a little confused, and I thought Justin said that a couple of years ago, gas was at 3 something, right? Or somebody said
I
it.
said 2014.
Was it 14?
It was at
So did we
$3.25.
adjust those lines? Like, did we bring them up and down? Or, I mean, when it was at the 314, it covered it. And so I'm just trying to figure out,
I don't know. That's what I'm
I
asking.
mean, so last year, did we have a overage? Like, did we not go over what was allotted because it was so low? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if that number changes. I know this sounds convoluted.
Nope. I think I understand what you're asking. And last year, I believe our gasoline budget, give me 1 second.
Take your time.
All the signals from the PUC is they're going to increase rates.
So gasoline, we budgeted 193,000. Last year, we spent 129,000.
I'm saying, say it one more time.
Last year, we budgeted, as we are this year before the increase, 193,000.
193.
And change with, 290, I think it is, or whatever. But just using round numbers, we ended up spending about 129, 130
Okay, and so that difference stays in that?
Yeah, so if you,
Well, also keep in mind that we stopped paying for the school's gas.
Oh, okay, but I just want to understand how the budgeting thing works. So that stays in that year after year if you don't use it, correct, and moves forward? No? No? Okay, explain to me, because I don't understand. So if you don't spend it, it goes where?
So if you don't spend it in the budget, what we'll do is we'll typically look at the past several years, because the year before, we spent 206,000. So we overspent it. We'll look to see if it's in the same ballpark to make sure that we're not over or way under, depending on what the account line is. In this case with gasoline, we've left it there because the past 3 years we've been around the 180, 206. Last year was a little lower, but you have to keep in mind COVID also does come into play where we're driving
right.
less and everything else, which is part of the reason why it was so low.
There was a difference, there's such a gap. But what happens to that money that was in that gap? Like, where did that go?
So are you saying where the
The difference
unexpended,
between the 193 and the 120,
that lapses to the general fund?
oh, it goes to the, that's what I was
It
trying
lapses to UFB.
I'm sorry?
It lapses to UFB, the general fund. It stays within the
okay.
general fund.
Okay, so that's where it goes.
that's what I was saying, if we
Yeah.
pass something and we didn't use it, it would go down there, if that's, you know, so it's not like it's gonna go away. It's still-
Well, I
we-
just
we
wanted
still
to-
pass it back to the taxpayer.
That's the money that we returned to the taxpayers. That X number, whatever,
Which was
did
theirs,
this year.
Okay. I just,
Nope, that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, obviously, we're concerned about the fuel. Let the departments go back, recalculate it, and have them come back and talk about it.
I'd also like them to go back and look at, I mean, the
Absolutely.
PUC's absolutely targeting that they're gonna
Yeah. So
increase rates.
let's look at it. Let's go through the exercise.
At least let's know what the number is.
Sure.
I mean, we
Yep.
we may decide to do nothing with it, but let's know what it is. Yes, Tim?
I saw a yes and I saw a no, so I'm like,
3 years ago, when we had the $600,000 thing with the gas and everything, Steve Cotton had told me that we were paying for their gas and,
Yeah.
and that, and then they worked some sort of deal out.
They were coming over.
I don't think, I guess we weren't
Pumping
paying,
out
it wasn't
about
last year we were paying for it. It was 3 years ago.
So what you have to keep in mind with governmental budgeting and appropriations, we pay for it, they pay us back for it. But that total dollar, the 193, includes their portion.
Right.
We still pay for it, they then pay us back.
Right.
So you'll see the revenue
It used
offset,
to
but
not
you
pay
won't
us back.
see the,
Yeah.
I said, what line
Here's
item
the
is
key.
that?
It was including the, you know, when the old clam shack was here, we paid all the electricity too for 20 years.
so that's where the no and yes was appropriation-wise, it's still in our budget.
We buy it, but they reimburse.
Correct.
Yeah, like, I
We
mean,
have, if you
2
look at
years
the general
ago,
government revenue, you'll see, I think
we,
it's 60,000
we
in
pay
there
for their
that.
trash removal, they pay us back. After they decided that we had to have a call with them to discuss what was really, who was paying for what. It all got worked out in the wash.
I hesitate to bring this up. With all the money that's going to be flowing for infrastructure from the federal government, is there any fuel relief in there?
Not that I'm aware of at this point.
Well, you know, I mean, so the last survey I saw is out of the 50 states in the United States on this last bill that was passed, of the states getting revenue, we're 50th. So I don't know what we're getting, or if we're, so your guess is as good as mine. Anything else from the Budget Committee?
I would, Mr. Chair, if I could, Captain Cheatham, to Tim's earlier question about the hybrids, Captain Cheatham did look into that option back when the last time the lease was coming up. I don't know if, Patrick, you want to just quickly share what you were able to find out about that?
Good evening, everyone. Patrick Cheatham of your police department. So, as you know, we're approaching our 3-year lease, and so we've already ordered our fleet for next year. But we did look into hybrid models, anticipating not knowing what the election was going to cost, but because that technology is emerging and it's there. But we didn't really feel with the 2022 models that a hybrid fleet was going to be sustainable and something that we wanted to entertain. But I really do think in 3 years from now, I think our entire fleet will be hybrids. Ford's been really unpredictable with their fleets. We had Crown Victorias for 25 years, and then we went to SUVs, and we're undergoing a major overhaul of all of our equipment because they keep changing the specifications such that we can't transfer our light bars, our cages, our push bars. All those things are going to be brand new next year. So knowing that we had to shell out that much money for all brand new equipment, we said, you know what, this might not be the year to go to hybrids, but I really do think that in 3 years, when Deputy Chief Bernard and I, or then Chief Bernard and I, are approaching about a new fleet, you'll see that we'll be making proposals for hybrid vehicles, and possibly even electric vehicles.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
If we do that and move over to more electric powered vehicles, the hybrids aren't really an issue, but the plug-in hybrids or the plug-in all-electric would just mean we'd have to do a lot more creative budgeting for electricity and the power consumption.
I think Mr. Woolley was sitting right up here with me, and we'll be coming to you saying how we need to install charging stations in the back parking lot.
And you can do solar ones. I've seen them in parking lots. They have a solar roof. You park under it, and it directly feeds the car.
There's quite a few options out there, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. So the question to me is, we go to an electric car, say if we have a big, massive issue, and we have these cars that are on a charging station, and they're not available. What do we do then?
Well, let's cross that bridge
But I
when we
mean,
get to it.
there are certain things that you have to be careful, like electric.
Sure, and I'm not advocating for an entire fleet of electric vehicles. I'm just saying every year the technology is so impressive that when we attend the fleet managers conferences and things along those lines, it's so not overwhelming, but it's very impressive to see how things change on a yearly basis.
Great.
Thank
Okay. What are our open items? We have another meeting next Monday.
Just another issue you had brought up at the end of the last meeting was pickleball. That is currently, I believe there is going to be a citizen's petition on that, and the citizen looking at doing that has been working with Dave Wally and Art Salidas on the
Well,
details.
you better find the
of such.
location if they want to be serious about it.
Well, I believe the location they're looking at would be over in the West Road area, as there's more room there than up at the
Well, let
the
us
rec
know.
courts. Yep.
Is there anything else besides the fire department union contract that we have going to warrant?
Justin.
If you look at the third page, it has the tax rate calculation of everything that I currently have going to warrant, which is the operating budget, expendable maintenance trust fund, roadway maintenance trust fund, capital reserve funding for the fire department equipment, capital reserve funding for Pillsbury Cemetery expansion, to establish a recreation revolving fund, capital reserve funding for cable equipment, and then transaction of other business.
This might be the shortest ballot ever.
Yeah, I would just note that, I mean, these are all of the finance-related ones. There may be one related to the school district office if they decide to put a warrant article on their ballot.
Mr. Chairman, question?
Yes, please.
Real quick question, just on number 7, is this just to see, I mean, it's $1,000, I'm sure we could put it on in UFB, would that be just kind of to see what the interest is out there from the public, to have this type of fund?
So that $1,000 is to essentially establish it fully
Create
so
it,
that
right?
we can have it put aside, and that should be the only thing. After that, it should be self-funding.
Yeah, I know,
This is to allow us, like the
It's great,
Sensory Playground is a perfect example. I wasn't able to offer them PayPal or Venmo because we don't, in my opinion, we don't have the authority because we don't have a rec revolving fund to do that.
Okay, I
So
get
that's why they had to go through LAFA and a couple of the other organizations. If we do something like this, it'll allow people to make donations to ensure they go to the purpose they're looking for through the rec department.
I just was wondering about the philosophy behind it. I mean, I understand why we want to create it, we talked about it, I realize that, but we could just fund it and take it off the, really, it wouldn't matter about the vote, but I guess in a way, if we got the vote, then we could see what people's interests are with having that revolving fund too. So it's kind of a dual purpose. Is that what you guys were thinking?
See where
Okay,
it goes.
figure it that way.
Anything else? Accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourning. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Safe travels to all.